to sort of jump right in because we haven't got that much time really to go into all this. Although actually, it's plenty of time to get a sense of what we're doing. So just to recap briefly, we're going through all 5 principles of our system of practice in an integrated way. By which I mean that we're as it were, adding them in. I think this is how it works anyway. It's just like they're not 5 quite separate areas that have no relation with each other. In fact, they're all integrally related and work with each other. And basically, we're going through this whole thing in an integrated somatic way, body-based primarily, although not exclusively so, because well, I mean, several reasons for going into it in a somatic way. As I said yesterday, we can't really meditate without being, embodied. If we're not embodied, we're going to be probably in our mind. We're probably going to be thinking and proliferating. So that's one reason why embodiment or a somatic approach is so valuable. But also, a somatic approach lends itself to this process of integration. So I mean, as the day before yesterday, we simply started to become more embodied and going into the what I call the the somatic sphere, or even the somatic cloud. We used that metaphor of a cloud. So the cloud of body sensations, and then starting to get a sense of whether they are necessarily quite as solid and heavy and so forth as we tend to regard them as. And just beginning to notice that our soma, which means the living energy of the body, as I'm using it, our soma is actually vibrational. To put it more directly or simply, it is tingly. Our whole body is tingly, and some areas are sort of more kind of solid feeling and kind of locked up a bit. But as we saw yesterday, just by bringing awareness into an area, it gradually begins to open up. It's almost like we don't need to do anything other than just bring our awareness, excuse me, into a particular area of the soma, and then gradually it will begin to open up and reveal itself. So we went on from there to another aspect of the soma, which is the heart and the heart center, and we explored that yesterday to some extent. We explored the heart itself and just feeling into our sense of the heart and its felt senses. Before we actually started to relate it to positive emotion. So we just sort of experienced the heart. We also explored the area which would seem for most people to be behind the heart, or behind where we normally think of the heart center or feel the heart center to be, and just explored that a bit. And that is just for the purpose of seeing what we find out, seeing what we discover. So a lot of this is about discovery, and it's taking our existing practice of the principles of the system of practice, is taking our personal experience of it deeper and wider, but also in a way more, no, I've got to say that in a different way, in a way simpler. A simpler experience. And from one point of view, the whole project of the Dharma, waking up from delusion, waking up from suffering, is a process of greater and greater simplicity. So simplicity is one word for awakening. There's a word that probably most of you are well familiar with. You're certainly familiar with what it points to, which is prapancha. Prapancha is often described as proliferation or conceptual elaboration, but it's also emotional. It's to do with the way in which we, our mind is expressive of the glaciers: craving, aversion, delusion, pride, jealousy, and all the lot. of what we generally call negative emotions. Yeah. So the idea is to come into a simple place where those aren't happening in the first place. I've been calling this basic presence, but it's also known as access, upachara samadhi. Usually samadhi is translated as concentration, but I must admit I've got an aversion to the word concentration because for me it has the wrong feeling. It's like samadhi is something very, very simple, but very, very expansive. It's expansive because it's outside of the klesha mind. It's outside of the hindrances and so on. Yeah. So access is where we come into that basic state of presence, basic presence, because we're basically present, as I've said before. Yeah, so basically present in our experience and not just in our mental experience. Yeah, so the mind is very much part of what we are, but we need to sort of well, one way I put this very often is that we need to put it back, the mind back in its rightful place. So um, if you imagine, we've kind of got six senses. I know modern neurological science says we've got a lot more senses than that. But if we take the basic six, imagine the six of them. And it's like the mind tends to take up about 5/6 of the space. So, that's how much we give to the other five senses of the, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and, the body sense. And that's how much we're giving to the mind. So we just need to get the mind back into its rightful place. I think that's important to emphasize because we're not trying to, sometimes we feel in meditation or in Dharma practice, somehow we're trying to go beyond the mind. We're not, because we'll always have the mind. The mind is not going to go away. It's very clear that the Buddha had a mind and he used it very, very well. Yeah, so it's like we're not trying to destroy the mind or empty the mind. All we're doing is seeing it in, well, you could say in its true light and letting it take its natural place. So that's one way of talking about what we're about in Dharma practice. So today we're going to go on to the next area. We're sort of relentlessly moving forward from integration, positive emotion to spiritual death. So spiritual death is another way of talking about insight practice or wisdom, prajna or vipassana practice. But I think before we actually, I start introducing that and how we're going to approach it this morning, let's just do a meditation, maybe only about 15 minutes, in which we just sort of settle and touch upon some of the things that we've already been going into over the last 2 days. So once you've got your posture in place, just sitting. So this initial just sitting is simply opening up to what's here, and particularly what's here in terms of what's going on with the body and what's going on with the mind. So there's sure to be some mental activity going on. Just notice whether it's proliferating or to what degree it might be proliferating, or whether it's basically not proliferating and it's just kind of thoughts going on more or less in the background, or images in the background. And then we're going to detach or unhook our awareness from the conceptualizing mind simply by bringing our awareness into the immediate sensations, initially of the face. So the face is very close to where we feel that the mind is most of the time, but it's totally different. There are these tactile sensations, and as you bring awareness into the face, you might almost immediately notice there are areas of tension. So just let the awareness release any tension that you notice. And do the same as we bring awareness down. So start letting the awareness go downwards to the throat, and then in your own time, down through the upper and lower torso, and ending up with the sensations of contact with the cushion or seat and the floor. Have a sense that you are traveling down with the awareness. You are present wherever the awareness is. And when you reach the sensations of contact with the seating arrangements, whatever you have, just let the awareness be in those sensations. Notice the nature of those sensations. Notice any experience of vibration or oscillation in those sensations. Be aware that those sensations that you're experiencing of contact with what you're sitting on are directly in relation to the Earth's gravity. So the Earth isn't just rock and lava and stuff. is also energy. So see if you can just extend your awareness downwards to get a sense of this more kind of energetic earth, which we are in direct contact with. And also just noticing that it is possible to take your awareness down below where we usually feel that we end, the body ends. This represents the grounding of our posture. And the next aspect, which helps deepen our somatic awareness, is to bring alignment or greater alignment to the body. So as we've been doing, you can try the semi-imaginative method of bringing the chi or prana up from the earth. So on the in-breath, the prana comes up, the energy comes up from the earth with the breath. And it goes right up the core of the body, towards the back of the torso, but right up to the top of the head. And then on the out breath, it goes down through the pelvic floor into the earth again. And just do that a few times. If you want to breathe slightly more deeply with this, that can help. But it's just to notice whether that brings a sense of greater alignment and lift, or energetic lift even, into the body. Now be sensitive to whether your upper body is poised, is balanced, and not sort of leaning over even subtly to one side or another, or back or forwards. So you can make very subtle adjustment to find the point where it's poised. And then just let go of whatever you can let go of in terms of contractions or holdings. Let the eyes relax, let the jaw relax, and so on. Especially the abdomen, let the abdomen be relaxed, or at least let all these areas be as released as possible. And just be the whole breathing body. the whole sphere of tactile or somatic sensations. So as I've been saying, there's no need to focus anywhere that I point to if you feel uncomfortable with that. But with that proviso, and you can just stay with the whole sense of the somatic cloud, but with that proviso, just let the awareness come down to the lower abdomen for a little while. So it's the area that we've been calling the hara. And it's more or less within the abdomen, somewhat between the pelvic floor and the navel. And there may not be very much initially going on there. It's never going to be one of the most sensation-rich areas of the body, of the soma. But you can begin to get a sense of breathing sensations around there. And you can, if you wish, have a sense of breathing into the hara. So the fact that it's not a sensation-rich area is not a problem, because a sense that you might begin to develop it, and you can explore to see whether this is the case or not, is that, in a sense, it's a kind of space within our lower abdomen. An alive space. So if there are still proliferations going on, or any of the hindrances, just recollect the direct approach using awareness to counteracting them that we went into a couple of days ago. And now just seamlessly let the awareness be in the heart center. If the heart is not kind of revealing itself, you could just drop a question into your being. Where is my heart? Where is my heart center? And just notice the qualities present in that area of your soma, of your being. Now, keeping the awareness primarily in the soma, in fact, having a sense that you are in the heart center. You've kind of relocated from the head, where you normally seem to live, into the heart. You are the heart. The heart is the core of our being. And from there, open to kindness, benevolence, goodwill, well-wishing, love. So in other words, contact metta in whatever way works for you. And being in the heart, just notice whether there is a response in or from the heart, or a response in that deep area behind the heart, at least the heart as we normally experience it. And then, if you wish, you can drop in another question. So, to some extent, when we cultivate metta, we're bringing it into being. It's like I am developing metta. But metta goes far beyond that. There's also the quality that's referred to as Mahamaitri, great love, or unconditional love. So just still from the heart, drop in the question, is unconditional love already here? And then just be open. So kindness, benevolence, goodwill will be here if you're open to that. But is there a quality which, in a sense, seems to be beyond anything that I have created or I have developed? Okay, and just let go, just sit. Okay, so before we move on, any observations or questions about what we've just been doing?
Tejananda, I finally, when we're doing the part where we follow the breath up to sort of bring an alignment by drawing the breath up, I've been working with the end of the out breath for quite a few weeks and months. And I actually had a sense of something almost completely opposite to that happening, which is that at the end of, as I get to the very end of the out breath, there's a kind of almost like a reflex of a sense of alignment happening right at the end of the out breath without the actually drawing it up. I just wondered what you thought.
Well, what I think is that your own individual experience is the main thing. Yeah, so I mean, this is just a suggestion. I find it works for me in that way. I haven't actually explored what you just mentioned. So it's like when you know about something, oh, that worked for somebody else. Will it work for me? And you can try it and see whether you follow it. Yeah. So basically that.
Yeah. Okay. I just wondered what you thought. Thanks.
Any others?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
You said about the heart center, and I got there, and as soon as you started saying about unconditional love, I felt my heart center really closing, like solidifying, like as if, I don't know, maybe it's like protective. I just wondered if there was like any way that I could work with that, or how do you kind of try and allow that to open a little bit?
Yeah. Well, what I'd recommend is don't drop in that question for a start. So it's obviously it is not helpful to you. I would say just come into the heart, experience it as it is, and then open to the metta in whatever way you can, and then just keep with that. Stay in the heart, open to the metta, and I mean, that question dropped in can reveal it for some people, but it's like you may find there's just a point at which it's no longer your metta. Yeah, it's just metta. There is just metta here. There's just love here. So I mean, what you're saying there is quite useful because it's a clear contraindication of dropping in questions. So I mean, just to make that point to everybody, these are all kind of expedient means. In fact, the whole darn lot of it is all expedient means. Expedient to does it work or not? Does it lead to the principle? So if you could say, well, the principle of positive emotion is love. That's the basic principle. So, does it open more to that or not? So that's a question that we always have to ask with our practice.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so we'll move on. So yeah, we're going to go into the area of spiritual death somatically, or as I said, primarily somatically. Now, I need to sort of fill that in a bit. So spiritual death, that was the term that Sangharakshar chose to use for insight and insight practice. So insight or wisdom is about seeing through our delusions, seeing through what we are delusively holding on to. And seeing through those delusions is the way towards the cessation of suffering, the cessation of dukkha. Yeah, so we're looking to see what our delusions are and what, in a way, what effect they have in terms of giving rise to dukkha. Now, there's a whole lot of them, and they're described in terms of the 5 principal glaciers for a start. So you've got, well, basically you've got ignorance or delusion, or the illusions we have about what we are and how things are. That's ignorance. And then you've got craving and aversion, which are the primary ways in which that expresses itself, that basic delusion. And then we've got, well, the other 2 are pride and jealousy. Those are the traditional 5 that you find. But actually, if you look in, like the Abhidharma text, you'll find that there are dozens. And we don't really need to look into Abhidharma text to know that. We know in our own experience that there are a lot of these negative emotions, to use that term. And those negative emotions are not just causing suffering, they are suffering. They are in themselves, to be in a negative emotion, whether it's craving or aversion or any of their, or ignorance, ignoring, if we're in those, then there is going to be dukkha. And that's precisely why we have those 3 central stages in the Metabhavana, where we're working with people that we ignore, the neutral people, people who we're attached to, and people who we are aversive to. So that is really, really important, working with these 3. But we don't just work with them in terms of metta, we're also working with them in terms of our ethical principles, and the precepts that we bring into our lives, and express through our lives. And we're also working on them in terms of insight practice, because with insight practice, we're potentially seeing through the very basis of these deluded holdings, clingings, and so forth. So that's all pretty basic stuff, you could say. And I mean, in a way, it is as simple as that. We hold on to the idea or the notion that we are separate. And the emptiness teachings, which broadly covers most of the area of insight, the emptiness teachings are pointing to the fact that our actual experience is empty of what we're delusively holding onto. So it's quite important to understand that emptiness is not, despite the way in which that word kind of, it's not really a very good word, to be honest, emptiness, because it suggests that there's nothing. And we do have tendencies as human beings to go into one of 2 extremes most of the time. We're either going into eternalism or nihilism. So it's like the word emptiness can feed into nihilistic tendencies. for some people. So there's something really important to understand about emptiness, which is that it's not pointing to, well, it's certainly not pointing to the fact that we don't exist. Yeah. What it's pointing to is that we are actually whole and undivided. Yeah, and I'll just say that again because it's really important. We are actually whole and undivided. That is our actual nature. Yeah. So the self-view, the view that we are a separate, substantially existing self, is completely delusive. We are not a separate, substantially existing self. We are whole. We're complete. We're undivided. Yeah. And I don't just mean undivided within ourselves. We are undivided from everything and everyone. In fact, there's ultimately, you could say there's no we who's divided. There's just kind of us or this. All of this is undivided. We are not a separate entity. Yeah, so I think that kind of counteracts somewhat. Wholeness counteracts the sense that people might have that emptiness is about just seeing I don't exist. There is something quite specific that we will look into somatically right now, which is this sense of being a separate entity, a separate me. Where we've already kind of started on this by going into our somatic experience, but we're going to be opening to finding, or hopefully failing to find, boundaries, between our soma, between our own body and what we conceive to be outside our body. So we're implicitly looking at this self-view. I mean, this is, if you like, seeing through the view of being a separate and substantial self is the first major area that we need to explore in terms of insight practice. And there are various ways in which we sustain that view. In fact, many ways we sustain it unconsciously all the time. One of the ways in which we sustain it is by keeping up this me narrative all the time. Sometimes it's called the narrative self, because it's just like we have this sense of I existed in the past, this happened to me, I did this, and in the future I will do this, I will do that. And of course, at the moment, one of the sort of major narratives I think which is permeating the world is that something terrible is going to happen to me. I'm going to contract this virus and I might die. Well, of course, as Buddhists, we all know what the news is about this. The death rate is 100%. 100% of us ultimately die. So we're all going to go there sooner or later. And yet, there's a great deal of fear and anxiety around this, and all of that is very natural. On an ordinary human connected level, we're afraid for ourselves, but we're also afraid for many other people and people that we love. So we seem to be in this perilous place. But if we can truly discover our wholeness and interconnectedness, then that enables us just to be with what's happening without going into anxiety and fear and so forth. So insight practice is really, really important in this way. We're doing it to discover our ultimate connectedness, which is irreducible. We are irreducibly connected and whole. We can't get outside of wholeness. It's impossible. But we feel that we're separate. We feel that we're isolated, and I think especially right now. So what we're going to do now is making a little bit of inroads into seeing through that sense of separation. Okay. So I think we'll do a brief practice first, then we'll have a break. And then, if there are any questions more generally about what I've just said or about the observations about the practice, which will be quite short, then we can deal with that there. Okay, so just a brief practice. At this time, as soon as you're set up in your basic posture, just very briefly notice what's going on with the mind and the body. Letting the awareness come directly into the Soma, into the whole cloud of tactile body sensation. Contacting the heart, bringing awareness into the heart, even feeling that you are located in the heart or centered in the heart. And opening up to kindness, benevolence, goodwill. Just letting go of any boundaries to that goodwill, to that metta. Just allowing it to be completely boundless, all-inclusive. Everybody in this suffering world. And then let the metta just remain there. But come more strongly into the sense of the whole sphere of the body, of the tactile body, the somatic body, the energy of the body, the aliveness of the body. Notice the sensations of varying kinds and intensities, various degrees of apparent solidity or apparent vibration and tingliness. Okay, now we're going to look into our body experience right now, our experience of the body as this mass of sensations. And I'm going to pop in a couple of questions that you can use just to orientate your awareness into looking at the body with that as a kind of informing the way you're looking. So, what is the shape of the somatic body, of the tactile body? What shape does it have in your actual experience? As you're doing this, just be aware that you possibly may be projecting a mental image of your visual body onto your experience. So see if you can let go of that. When the Buddha said to Bahia, in the sensed, let there just be what is sensed. In other words, without any mental add-ons or images or projections. So what is the shape of the body without any mental images of the body? Okay, so does anyone have any observations there around that exercise? What is your felt sense of the shape of the body, of the somatic body?
I felt there were just chunks and lumps and spaces of energy.
Yeah.
And there were also parts that were not vibrating, where a part of an arm should be.
Okay. What was that, an experience of kind of no sensation or just a kind of solid sensation?
It felt like a continuation of an investigation of this idea of the cloud.
Mm.
So it was an investigation of a cloud of energy, and then suddenly, when you invited us to find a shape,
Yeah.
as long as I just, thankfully the hindrances of labeling took a back seat, so
Yeah, good.
there wasn't a shape.
Mm. Fair enough. I think that's a very adequate answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody else?
I found I had a really interesting feeling at one point of having very large ears because, I know it sounds a bit strange, but there was a loud noise outside. And
Yeah.
lots of bits of me sort of exist because I couldn't feel them. Not because they were blocked, but because there was no sensation for me. but at the time
Yeah.
of my ears being really huge.
It's a little bit difficult to hear you, actually.
Sorry, because
Yeah.
my ears felt really huge because
Oh.
I could hear a loud noise.
Right.
They looked sort of like that sensation took
Yeah.
over.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So, I mean, that's interesting because another experience that people sometimes have, and this happens in meditation. People observe. I mean, when people do, meditation reviews with me, sometimes, oh, my hands became really big. That's a typical one. Or it could be different parts of the body. But it's like, well, all that's happening is that you're noticing something about your experience that you're not generally noticing. Like with the hands, well, there are a lot more kind of nerve endings in the hands, so naturally, they're very full of sensation. I'm not sure about the ears. That's a very interesting one, but it's just within, it's in that ballpark, as it were. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I find the shape of my body was defined by where I was grounded, through my feet and my buttocks sitting on the chair, and my lower back, and the rest of it disappeared really.
Okay, good. Well, we'll go a bit more into that after the break, the short break we're about to have. But just one or two more observations from anyone?
Well, my observations were quite surprising for me because I thought this is a bit childish, but it was like I was in a sphere of bath foam. Like foaminess, the soft foamness was my awareness, and it was sort of spherical, but not really, because it wasn't my mind that was defining it. It was just my awareness, which was essentially based down somewhere. I think it was somewhere between my heart and my abdomen, and but there was that sort of sphere of comforting softness, I think, that would describe it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's great. I mean, your own description there, your own metaphor, and I mean, it might be parallel to when I talk about the cloud.
Yes,
cloud sense.
that would be my cloud, I think. Yeah.
So yeah, great. Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, Tejananda. I hit a brick wall with this bit of practice. So the last 2 days I've been absolutely alongside you. Today, and it has happened before, I have no idea why, but there's some very deep resistance. And I get overwhelmed by a sense of nauseousness, and that's all that I'm feeling is nausea.
Yeah.
Don't know why. I mean, have you got any?
Yeah.
I
have got some idea. I mean, of course, I might be, missing the mark with what's happening with you. But I mean, generally speaking, when we start to look at insight practice, when we start to go into these areas, it can be challenging. And it might be challenging at a level which is quite unconscious. At one level, you might be up for it. For many people, it might not be any big deal at all. But sometimes it's just like, whoa, it's just like our whole being is not wanting to go there. So I think if that's happening, it's important just to sort of, stop doing the insight practice and just
That's
come
what
back.
I did. I mean, I was doing the insight practice as an order member, and I just couldn't get past this nausea and resistance. And so I put it down for 18 months. And this is the first time I've been back again. And there it is still.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you have to approach it by stealth. I mean, for instance, I mentioned yesterday having the sense of, when we were doing the metta thing with, I mentioned, I didn't actually take you into it, but the possibility of having Amitabha or the Buddha behind you.
Yeah, that's what I experience. Yeah.
Seeing that love coming through you
Mm.
from the Buddha. Yeah.
Mm.
Now, I mean, that is another way of approaching insight.
Okay.
I mean,
Helpful.
it's obviously related to sadhana.
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
practice, but it's like, well, that's another way in which it's like it's coming through you as love. And, as I was saying just before, there comes a point when that love is no longer you. It's no longer from you.
Mm.
Same result. So
Okay.
that might be the way for you.
I think it probably. I think it probably is, because otherwise it feels like a frontal assault.
Yeah.
The back is much more vulnerable, but
Mm.
open. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's just for the rest of the session, just listen to what's being said. But if it doesn't if it has that effect on you, just back to that, come back to the love.
I will. Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's just have that break now. So it'll be 17 minutes past that we'll resume. So that's 7 minutes. Okay, so we'll resume. Just any other questions or observations about what we've been doing so far?
I had a question around the bit where you were talking about emptiness before.
Yeah.
Because even when you were just talking about it, and in relation to the coronavirus and people getting ill and blah, and how much everyone's anxious about it, and then obviously the not separateness from everything sort of made me feel a lot more, like kind of, well, the anxiety and worry lessened at the idea that nothing is separate, so there's sort of less fear of death in a way. But then I get this sort of, and I get this whenever I kind of lose anxiety or worry around something, it feels really weird to not feel anxious, and then it's almost like, oh, I can't care that much if I'm not really sort of tightly worried about people's well-being or something. I was just wondering if you have anything to say around that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that is just such a, well, it's a very human response. Yeah, and I mean, one of my observations, like all of us, I've had a mother, and it's like my mother was kind of professionally anxious for me throughout all her life. And it's just like, it didn't help me, and it didn't help her. It's just, anxiety is, it is a state of suffering and contraction, and it actually gets in the way of compassion. It's just like it closes down our heart, it contracts us. So it's like, if we become more and more open, I mean, this, I'm not, don't underestimate that this is, it's not going to happen overnight, but it's like we're gradually, with the Dharma, we're becoming more and more open to everybody and everything. And more and more clear that we are not separate. We are all in this together. but it's like anxiety is a quality which communicates itself. And I mean, it's being communicated throughout the world at the moment, just by the way in which governments and media are covering this particular outbreak. Yeah. So, but nevertheless, as I said before, well, ultimately, as was pointed out very clearly by the Buddha, old age, sickness, and death are completely endemic. Everybody is subject to that. That is what we would call primary dukkha. It can't be avoided. But that's why we're practicing the Dharma. We acknowledge that the only response to primary dukkha is compassion. And you could say, well, if there's compassion, which is a state of, open-heartedness and, sort of being aware of suffering in relation to that open-heartedness, then we can really respond clearly and fully. But if we're contracted back into fear and anxiety, that is undermined or mitigated at least. So, that's briefly the way of talking about it.
Okay. Yeah, I think maybe it's just I sort of get, because I'm so used to being stuck in the rut of anxiety, it feels a bit weird and scary to not be in it. I think I just need to remember that it should be the other way, or, I need to kind of switch.
Yeah. Well, just remind yourself that anxiety doesn't help.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Can you hear me? I'm not sure I'm getting the hang of the muting and the non-muting.
Yes. Now you've turned it off.
Can you hear me again now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Don't do anything. Just talk.
Yeah, what we seem to have been exploring is the nature of our experience.
Yeah.
And you led us through really subtle, and I'm finding it very interesting. And you've mentioned things like noticing the experience beneath the sense of groundedness. And then we're wondering if we're using our imaginations that, excuse me, is my imagination, because I haven't got an experience of that.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned what does metta feel like? So I suppose the point I'm trying to get to is almost knowing what is a positive experience and what isn't. What's the last questioner? What's the sort of tenderness in the heart and what's an anxiety? And sort of almost, it's almost become so open, I can't almost tell what I'm feeling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that is quite interesting. And it's something we might be able to go into tomorrow or the next day a bit more. But it's just like, well, with regard to, it's all basically sensations.
Yes.
Fear and anxiety are sensations. And, well, with love also, there are sensations. So it's not just sensations, but, sensations are involved. So I think a basic thing is that you can notice whether those sensations feel more open or more contracted.
Right.
Yeah. If they feel contracted, well, I mean, it speaks for itself, doesn't it? Yeah. If there's more feeling of openness about it, and these sensations are just here. Even if those sensations are painful, painful Vedana, you can still have a feeling of openness around them because you're not secondarily contracting around the pain. And that can include emotional pain as well.
That's really helpful. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll move on. There'll be opportunity in between. We'll be doing a few shorter exercises between now and 1 o'clock, and there'll be opportunity for both your observations and any questions in between each one. So let's just do another one, a bit along the lines of what we were doing before. So just have your posture. And just be in the Soma right now. Just be in the whole sense of the cloud or sphere of body, tactile, vibrating, or not vibrating sensations. Notice the sense of aliveness. Of the whole of the Soma. Notice the various sensations which are happening. Various kinds of sensation. Ranging from very fast tingly ones to rather solid feeling areas of the body. And get a sense of the body in terms of the metaphor of a cloud of sensations. So what you did before we had the break in terms of looking at or looking for a shape has a bearing on this. You may be able to let go more of the sense of the somatic body conforming to the imagined shape of the visual body that you can project onto it. So let go of the visual sense of the body or the visual memory of the body and just be this cloud of sensations. And as we were doing before, notice the dimensionality of the cloud of sensations. There's a sense of it being or occupying a space. Or dimensionality. So we've explored the sense of, or getting a sense of the shape of this somatic body or tactile body. So with regards to the sense of it occupying space in some way, does it have any edges? Does the space have any edges? Does even the cloud of sensations have any distinct edges? And again, watch out for mental images coming in which conclude that, for instance, well, I'm sitting on a seat, that's an edge. But all you have is those particular sensations within this cloud of sensations. Is that an edge? Sure, you can mentally impute an edge, but is it an actual experience of an edge? The same with the clothing against the skin. Are there any boundaries? In your actual experience? So if you're finding that the somatic body is spacious, if you're not finding edges, or at least not very clear edges, can you just allow that your awareness can go beyond the confines of the body as you usually conceive it? So there could, for instance, be a sense of this cloud of sensations in a kind of effectively boundless space, a kind of aware space. So remember, the thinking mind is useful for pointing you in the right direction, but you can only notice this and explore it with awareness. Okay. So any observations or points there?
Yes, Tejananda.
Hi.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So I found it particularly helpful when you said to look for an edge. The way I was sitting, the way I am sitting, is that I have my both arms resting on the chair edges, and so my right arm, lower arm, really I could feel the pressure of the point where that was happening. And so what I think I was trying to do was kind of feel, well, what about beyond it? So it was, if you like, it was becoming, how can I say, it felt like that pressure was indicating to me where an edge was. And yet part of me was wanting to say, to explore, well, maybe there's something beyond that I'm not able to feel. Just, I'm really interested in all the aspects of boundaries. So that particular thing, is there another way to explore it or get beyond the pressure?
Well, is noticing that the pressure is just pressure.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a particular intensity and character of body sensations, which I mean, in ordinary everyday experience, we naturally interpret that as an edge. Yeah. So, but what we're doing here is looking into, well, if you like, an extraordinary way of looking at our experience. Yeah, it's not, so I mean, you have to be clear that when you're doing Vipassana explorations, what you're looking for is not going to help you in your everyday life directly. What it helps is to get a clearer sense of what is actually going on here. Yeah, and I mean, I've already quoted, the Buddha's teaching to Bahia, when there's in the scene, just the scene, and so forth. Yeah. Well, that is the way to the cessation of dukkha. Yeah. So we're doing that, but I mean, it's important, and this definitely applies to everybody, not to mix up what is called ultimate truth and relative truth. Relative truth, which is our everyday lives, is still true. Yeah, but ultimate truth is truer, you could say.
I felt I was imposing something. I realized, oh, I'm telling myself a story. That's my, I had a sense of what was happening there. But yeah. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else?
Can I just ask about something a bit different? I find, I suppose, like most people, I imagine, that it's not easy to take away the visual sense of this is our leg and so on. The only way I find I can get away from that is actually by sort of, in a sense, focusing my vision. So my eyes are closed, but I'm looking straight forward.
Sure.
And then it's blank in front of me. And then it seems I can allow the sort of sensation thing to be there separate from a mental picture of what I look. I wonder if you've got any sort of comments on that way of approaching it.
Well, I think that is effective. I mean, clearly from what you're saying, it's effective for you, but generally speaking, any way that you can use to drop out of the mental projection onto your experience is going to be useful. So there are areas in which we're mentally projecting, and again, in terms of everyday experience, that's important. That's the way all of our senses work together, and with that we create the sense of self and world, and the relationship between them. But in terms of this kind of practice, whatever helps you sort of drop out of the visual projection, the mental visual projection, is great. So if it works for you, do it.
Oh, thank you.
Anyone else?
Tejananda, could I ask you a question about the mental imaging, because I'm exploring the move between the sensation in the body and then an image that comes into the mind that relates to the experience in the body, which is it's not literal, like a leg or an arm. It's often a shape so in the first meditation, affected by the vertical axis, I experienced my face folding into itself, so it disappearing. That sensation, but it arrives as a sensation and an image. A face folding in. Axis, and I'm slightly confused that I'm laying over the direct experience of the sensation with some kind of abstract image. And what I became aware of in that last meditation is that if I kind of then start to hang out in the abstract image, I lose the alignment and my throat opens. And I was wondering if that's, I'm almost craving the abstract image in relation to the sensation. And so it's quite subtle, but I just noticed I'm almost leaning into it. So I close this down to come back to the alignment. I don't know if that.
No, what you're describing is very good. You're describing it very, very clearly. And so what you are doing is that, I mean, you could say the mind is just producing a mental image to try and characterize mentally what you're experiencing somatically. Yeah. So it's like the mental image of the face folding in. It's just like, well, momentarily it might be quite useful, but then, as you're saying, if you stay with those sort of images, you become unaligned. Yeah. So it's just like, well, just notice, okay, that's a mental image. It's helpful. Thank you. Now it can go.
So should I be trying to quieten the arising of those images?
No, don't do anything about them. Just notice them when they arise. Notice them, know them for what they are, and just let them go. So it's just like, okay, mental images have arisen. Now it's gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like to hang out with them a little bit, but then.
Yeah, you can hang out a little bit. I mean, you don't want to set up an opposition to them, because resistance creates persistence, as they say.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Tejananda, can you hear me?
Just about.
Okay, I'll bring it on. So the language that helps me connect with sensations is sensing, the language, and also texture.
Yeah.
If I say the word texture to myself, or if I hear that, then immediately I'm in my sensations in a much more rich and very varied way than if you say try to find them or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, that's the language that helps me.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I mean, you're quite right. There are all these different ways of talking about our experience in terms of all of the sense fields. And I have my particular habits, but thanks for reminding me.
You're welcome. And I'm able to connect through what you're saying.
Yeah. So everybody come into the texture of your experience. Actually, Rajumitra is very good at using that sort of language, but I'm not so good at it. Anyway, good. Okay. Let's just do one more, and then we'll sort of probably round up there. I've got about 3 more I'd like to do with you, but we might be able to do one tomorrow morning as well. Just sort of, it's good to sort of bring the previous day's theme a bit into the next day. So let's just do another one.
Okay, I just have a question.
Okay.
When I did that meditation, very quickly I lose a sense of boundary of my physical body, and everything just feels like energy. And then when you talked about expanding it, I expand beyond that, and the whole experience feels very pleasant. And I was wondering if that could be described as metta.
Why do you ask that question? What's difficult to you?
Okay, because I struggle with the experience of metta.
Yeah.
And yet, when what's much easier for me is to experience this non-boundary, non-physical boundary, and that feels very expansive, and it has a quality of metta.
Yeah.
It has a quality of meeting, I suppose, absolute or beyond metta, beyond myself.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, exactly. So, I mean, I think one of the things that I sometimes get people to do, I haven't this time yet, is just to notice, when metta is there, or let's say even better, when somebody says to you, oh, that was kind of you. What does it feel like? If you go, oh, for me, it's just like, well, it didn't feel like anything in particular, but there was just a sense of connection going on. Yeah. And, it's like, well, that's how we talk about kindness. So it's like metta, we tend to associate it with certain kinds of pleasant feeling. And, it is often associated with pleasant feelings. But the metta itself is something much more expansive, all-pervading, and somehow mysterious. So what I would call unconditional love is of that nature. It's just expansive, and we're just in it, as it were. And there would be definitely a sense of open-heartedness there. But I mean, when I say open-heartedness, I don't mean necessarily that you're even particularly aware of the heart as being in the chest. It's just like the heart has become that openness. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I would say that you're on the right track there.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just say thank you for that, because I've been feeling like that and wondered what on earth was going on. I feel quite reassured that somebody else is.
Well, it's the difference between, if you like, conditional metta and unconditional metta. Yeah. So it's really, really helpful to be able to notice that distinction when your metta moves from being something that you've created to something that is just expressing through you, so to speak.
Yeah, that was very helpful, actually.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Okay, I'm determined to get this one more exercise in. So no more questions for a moment, please. So this will just build up on, or build up from what we've just been doing. So again, just straight into the Soma. Into the sense of this whole cloud of sensations. Now maybe sensing it directly as not having any particular shape and not having any particular edges. Being spacious, open, boundless. So notice that you can just be all that. You can be the somatic cloud, you can be this boundless space. When I say boundless, I don't mean a kind of experience of infinity. I just mean you can't find any bounds, you can't find any edges. Okay, now, can you find an inside or an outside to this space? So here you have to be even more careful about mental projection, because the mind jolly well knows what's inside and what's outside, but we're looking for what the mind does not and cannot know. So just in the sensed, just what is sensed, as much as possible. Is there an inside or an outside? And the question might arise, well, inside or outside of what? So at least at the initial level, an inside or outside of me. Or my body, my Soma. Okay, so just notice what you're noticing, observe what you're observing, or take note of it, so to speak, mentally. Now, in addition, notice sounds. Probably our environment is all too quiet at the moment, but just notice whatever sounds are occurring while still aware of the somatic cloud in its space. And do sounds seem to be inside or outside? Do they have an inside or an outside? Are there sounds in me and sounds outside me, apart from mental labeling? Or are all sounds in, so to speak, a single undivided space, just like the somatic sensations? Are sounds even passing through you? Or passing through this space, which you usually take to be you? Now, finally, half open your eyes, just look downwards. Keep a sense of the Soma. Keep a sense of the sounds. Usually when people open their eyes, they immediately have a sense of me in here and that out there. Just comes straight in. But just notice what is seen. And also be aware of What's not seen? What's not seen probably includes your body. Or at least most of it. So there's just sensations and sounds open to this visual space. So is there an inside and an outside, even in terms of what is seen? Or can you get a sense of those three sense fields all just being open and spacious without any divisions? Okay, so I admit that last bit might have been going too far for some people, but yeah, the first two. So, first of all, we're looking for an inside and an outside in terms of the Soma and the somatic space. Then in terms of sounds. So any observations on those to start with?
Yeah, hi. I sort of I experienced something of it was almost like a spectrum of my Soma dissolving into something that felt further away or kind of outside. But I tried to imagine something from outside coming in to try and sense into that boundary, and then I experienced the energy kind of contract in a very defensive way. It felt like it suddenly got a lot smaller around my body. It's quite painful, but it was just, yeah, just an observation really. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know, how much it's like imaginative or whatever, but it definitely felt like a big contraction around myself, and then I could expand it outwards again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was an imaginative thing coming in, and just noticing the results of it gives you very important feedback. Yeah. So it's just like, well, when you notice you're contracting, and I mean, this is not just true of this exercise; it's true of life in general. It's because we're bringing some sort of view to it, or some sort of, we're imagining something about it. So with these sort of exercises, well, in a sense, we're in a very safe place, and we're doing it on the basis of integration and positive emotion. So you can just be safe to open, and if you notice those sort of things emerging, just let them go. Yeah, just let them go, and come back to the sense of expansiveness, or just looking into whatever you're looking into in terms of your actual experience.
Hi, Tejananda. Hi, it's Michelle. I just had, I wanted to say on the last one and this one, that the outside and the inside seemed to be sort of emotion, where the expansiveness was the, it seemed like to be in that expansiveness, you had to get rid of conditions and emotion to be able to expand. And it was before you said about the sound, I heard, because there's birds by me, so I heard a bird whistling, and that just took the emotion, or the build up, what I thought was solid, away into that expansion. And the one before, when you were saying about the cloud, because I had a dark cloud and a light cloud, and the sun came through the window and
Oh.
dispersed the dark cloud.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just interested in how outside experiences coming in can affect your inner somatic experience, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, they of course they're affecting our somatic experience all the time, you know, on the everyday level. So, you know, and you know, we have sort of, well, emotional relations to what's coming in from what we perceive as outside. Yeah, and that's partly because we are perceiving it as outside. You know, in other words, outside me, you know, can have the effect of either making me feel happy or unhappy, let's say. You know, so all of that applies. So, I mean, in a sense, with these sort of ways of looking, you know, we'll deal with the whole emotional thing separately. Well, yeah, I mean, we've gone into aspects of it already because, you know, we're complete beings, and emotion is part of that. But you know, we will look at that. But with these kind of exercises, you have to keep a very, if you like, you have to keep it very sort of simple. You know, so you're just looking into this. Now, what I did there was to complicate it a bit by bringing in 3 sense fields. But even so, with each one, you know, it's just like, it's just what, you know, it's just, if you like, the bare information coming in, irrespective of any mental add-ons to that. And I mean, you know, it's a process of discovery because, as I've said before, you know, sometimes it takes a while to notice that we are doing that we're adding something on mentally. But when you do, okay, now you know, and you can sort of move on from that. You can let it go.
Thank you.
Okay, it's getting to 1 o'clock. Badra's going to turn us off in a minute, but just 1 or 2 more observations about the inside-outside thing.
Hi, Mary here. Yeah, I just
Hi.
wanted to ask sort of, I found that I could, you know, have a kind of sense of this kind of cloud and a kind of dimensionlessness to the Soma, that experience. And then with the kind of the edges or the inside outside, as soon as I try to look for that, it kind of, that projection then becomes on my experience, and suddenly I feel more contracted, and it's like, oh, well, this is inside and it's outside. But without the question, it's kind of, I can feel a bit more, yeah, there's more of that dimensionlessness. So just wondering what you say about that.
Well, you're quite right that you need to let go of the question. You know, it's like the question is just like a pointer, and you know, once you see which way it's pointing, then you're into your immediate experience, and you can leave the question behind. Yeah, because you know, it's like what you're looking for is known implicitly. So you know, you're quite right. I mean, everybody would be quite right to let go of the question and just come into what it was pointing to.
Okay, thank you.
1 more, if there is 1 more.
I think I'd quite like to just say something. For myself, one of the things that I'm noticing about my experience is that as we settle, my tendency is to go out into quite a broad, open awareness.
Yeah.
And then the sensations seem to arise within that field of awareness. So when you ask the question about in or out, all that I get is a sense of the sensation is definitely arising within awareness.
Okay.
So that's kind of the reference point.
Yeah.
So, and then sound, again, it simply rises within awareness. So,
yeah,
it's kind of somehow it makes it in and out. If I'm just resting in an open space, then the in and out doesn't seem to arise as a question. So I have no idea what to make of that, but feels pleasant enough, so I'll stay with it.
Well, yeah, we haven't got time to go into that really, but I mean, basically, you're already pointing to partly where we'll be going tomorrow, so we can explore this further. You know, the whole thing of awareness and what part that has in all of this is well, very relevant. So you know, that will be one of the things that we start looking at tomorrow. Yeah. But anyway, you know, I think we better call it a morning there. In fact, morning is well over. So you know, thank you all for being here. See you tomorrow.
Yes, thanks, Tejananda. And once again, yes, has been flagged up on the screen. Thank you, whoever's done that. The virtual Dharma Bowl is there. So thank you very much. Very much appreciate the donations that have come in so far. I asked Judith to check this morning, and yes, it is happening. So much appreciation, and if it could continue, that would be great. And thanks very much, Tejananda. Lovely teaching yet again. So much appreciation. And see you all tomorrow.
Tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, and see many you tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.